Welcome back to the corner, everyone. I am the DM as always, and today, we're talking about Concord because it's the dead game that just won't die, I guess. Now, I heard about this, or I saw Asmongold's video. I didn't actually watch it, but I saw this video from him. And his title is Concord leak shows Sony wasted $400 million. That is more than double what I was aware of that it cost. I thought it had a budget of 150 million. For it to have a budget of 400 million? Nah, I gotta see this. Like, I honestly, I really didn't care about anything from Concord after my last video that I did on it, but this, so this is only on Twitter as far as I can find. I can't find a YouTube video or anything. From Colin Moriarty of the Last Stand Media. This was on the Sacred Symbols podcast.
Who really gives
podcast. So yeah. Let's check this out and see see what's going on.
I want to talk about Concord. I wasn't going to ever talk about this game again because who really gives a shit? However, and I don't do journalism really anymore, as you guys know, and we talk about this a lot. I was a journalist at one time, and I used to break a lot of stories, and these days I don't really grind like that. So the stories that I break these days are usually always people coming to me. And someone who worked on Concord reached out to me, and I verified who this person was and went through all of that and talked to this person extensively, for a long time.
Okay.
And got some, I think, interesting information that I can share about Concord. And I think people will be interested about it. The reason that I wanted to talk about it is because some of the assumptions that I had made about the game were dead wrong as far as how much it cost and how much Sony really lost on it. So the big thing that you really need to know here
so much
about this is that Concord cost about $400 million to make.
Oh my God.
And the story goes that
is wild.
Concord, by the time Concord was, so in the first quarter of 2023, Concord had basically entered an alpha state. This was before Sony had even purchased the team. But Sony had been working with Probably Monsters, and which was the original owner of Firewalk and Firewalk, probably since late 2020, maybe 2021 at the latest on Concord. The game was in development before that.
Yeah,
up to the point that the game went
about
into alpha
that's
state.
Pretty standard.
They had already spent about $200 million on it.
Oh
and
my God.
It's unclear how much of that money is from Probably Monsters and the original investors into the game, and how much of that money is from Sony.
It doesn't really matter, to be honest. That's insane.
There's this term in product development, not only with games, but really with everything. You can like manufacture a tchotchke. You guys might have heard of it. It's called minimum viability, or a minimum viable product.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
The idea behind this, or MVP, the idea behind this is that this is like what you're trying to achieve. And it's like, once you cross this barrier, you feel comfortable selling it. It's not that it's the best it can be, or that it's what it's going to be by the time you launch it, because there's all sorts of extra stuff you do to it. But like, this is the minimum viability.
Yeah. So this is extremely standard practice, especially in the games field. A product needs to have and there's usually deadlines for these things, by the way. It needs to be at a certain point by a certain time to be considered viable, because if it doesn't reach a certain level of like readiness, of doneness by a certain time, then the budget projection is going to start increasing, or how much it costs to produce it is going to start increasing. And the higher it goes, the less and less and less viable it becomes.
Of the product. When the game had already had $200 million spent on it and was basically in an alpha form in quarter one of 2023, from that point until the game launched, Sony spent another $200 million on it. The
That's wild.
scuttlebutt behind the scenes about Concord is that the game was in a laughable shape when it was shown. And
Yeah.
basically like when the alpha was ready to go and they were kind of being like, we're ready to kind of get moving towards getting this thing out in the next year or two. It was in such horrible shape that Sony felt like they needed to spend that much money again. So, 200 plus 200 to get the game to the MVP status, not to the status of it being like a great game, to get it to just viability. And that at that time in Q1 2023, there was nothing done. Like a major expense was having to urgently outsource much of the game to other studios to finish building the game out.
Okay, so this explains a lot about the state of Concord. More likely than not, what was happening is the original vision for the product was shit. Right? Let's just be honest about that. It was probably just complete shit. And more likely than not, it was in development hell for those first 3 years, for that first $200 million. For one company, or for two different companies to both spend $200 million on Concord, and it still to come out like it did, there is no way that Concord wasn't in development hell and that things were constantly being altered throughout the entire process. Guaranteed.
And that two fundamental things were not worked on at all up to the point in which the game was shown in alpha. Onboarding, nothing about that. No, like there was nothing about how players get on, like how they make their character, all that kind of stuff. Or
tutorial, basically. There was no tutorial.
Choose their character and get there. And monetization. Two very expensive, very specific and boutique things that happen to games like this. And so that's the first thing that I wanted to say is,
for them, that's fucking wild to me. That is actually wild. To not even have a tutorial, that should be the first thing they really work on once it's in a functional state. I can't say too much due to NDAs, but there's another game that I am helping test, and when the alpha for it first came out, it didn't have a tutorial, but after the first 4 or 5 patches, after the game was in a proper functional state for alpha testers, they added a tutorial. Because even the alpha testers were like, we need a tutorial. And even before they added one in game, they had a whole ass document written out that they gave to us, that they gave to all the alpha testers, that was this is what everything does. This is what these are the keybinds. This is what this mechanic means. This is what this mechanic means. This is how this works. They had a tutorial written out.
That it's not only about the ongoing cost, which would be in the millions to keep the game going per month, but that the game cost about $400 million to make, soup to nuts. Sony put most of that money in, and it is not only so, because we had kind of said this must be Sony's biggest loss ever on a game, and it is. It's the biggest game Sony's ever released from a budgetary standpoint from the first party or second part.
Yeah, he's right. And the thing is, this makes Concord's flop even worse. This, I think one of my videos is I titled it something like Concord's failure makes Anthem seem like a success or something like that. Dog, if this is true, and this game cost $400 million in budget, or had a $400 million budget, this should have been the single greatest game in video game history. And for it to have flopped as hard as it did, there is it can be attributed to nothing other than colossal failures at a managerial level from both its previous owners and from Sony.
Party. So let that sink in.
It's crazy.
And it's totally unintuitive. There are games that are in development right now at Sony first and second party that are more expensive than this. But as of the games that have come out so far, so think about like Spider-Man 2 and so on and so forth. We know The Last of Us Part 2 cost $220 million. Spider-Man 3 is going to cost about $350 million. This game costs more than that. And they lost all of it because they made no money.
Wild.
They made about $1 million gross revenue. And then they gave it all back. So this is a huge, multiple hundreds of millions of dollar loss. Now, the question is, why? Why did this happen?
Managerial
This
failure.
game was heavily championed behind the scenes. Now, we know this because Sony ended up... What's funny is that the game is presented in Q1 2023 as this, we're kind of getting towards the end. The game is nowhere near being done. It's in a horrible position. And then Sony buys the team. The idea behind this was, and the term apparently verbatim had been used, that Concord is the future of PlayStation. That they had such major ambition for this game that it was referred to internally as a Star Wars-like project for Sony. That
Star Wars? This game was like Star Wars to Sony? Oh my god! If you compare it to Outlaws, that actually makes a lot of sense. That makes a lot of sense. Oh my god!
It can be repeatedly revisited over and over and over again, not only in cross media, but in what we were seeing. We've already kind of seen little bits of it. So the weekly story vignettes that they were going to release, and then of course the inclusion in Amazon's Secret Levels anthology. That's like just scratching the surface of it. Ironically, the game was codenamed Chaos behind the scenes. And a major thing about the game is that there was, and I think we can kind of get this vibe from just the nature of the people making it and kind of the way the game reads and all that, a toxic positivity vibe.
Yes.
You weren't allowed to say anything, apparently internally, about this game. About how
anything negative.
Something's wrong with it. Character designs are not right. Yeah. And so on and so forth. They really, truly believe this was Herman Hulst's baby, apparently. And he internally was himself a massive champion of the game.
So wait, who was that? Who did you say?
And he internally was himself a massive, truly believe this was Herman Hulst's baby, apparently.
Herman Hulst. Let's look up who that is. Herman Hulst. Hulst Sony. Let's see who this is. Who are you? Herman Hulst. Let's go to LinkedIn. He probably has a LinkedIn, I bet. Yep. Herman Hulst. So he is CEO Studio Business Group. That's who he is a part of. At least I assume this is him. Maybe it's not, but I doubt that it's not. Okay, so he is like a big wig, basically. Yeah, PlayStation Studios. Yeah. That does not surprise me at all. Okay.
And he internally was himself a massive champion of the game. So it's not that. So the reason I'm telling you all of this, it's some interesting information, of course, but it's that I had said when people were like, Concord lost $200 million. Now people were pulling that money out because that's basically how much like some of the first party games like Ghost of Tsushima,
I had heard
Part 2, etc. kind of cost in that frame. And I was like, there's no way that it costs that much. I was saying like it cost 9 figures, probably like low $100 million, but there's no way it cost $200 million. No, it cost $400 million. So, and I am totally solid on this source, by the way. So that's why I'm willing to share it with you. Because again, I'm not really a journalist. So yeah, the big things to take away, $400 million loss. The game was in horrible shape as of 18 months ago before release. Not even monetization, no onboarding, most content not even there. The game was in such bad shape at that point that they spent the budget of it again in urgent outsourcing to get the game finished. from all of these different angles over an 18-month period. Internally, the game was considered part of the future of PlayStation, with heavy cross-media references and a system of toxic positivity surrounding it that didn't allow anyone to meaningfully change the course of the game. Because if the people at the top truly believe in something, you're not going to be able to do much about that, I don't think, from the trenches. So
Yeah.
I thought
This is kind of what I was saying before about how about like the DEI bullshit that's happening, and that was clearly forced into this game, right? And I said in that video that I was sure that there were probably a couple of developers who were fine with these character designs, but that I guarantee that the vast majority of them weren't. And this is why we got the character designs we did. Is because they weren't allowed to speak out and tell them, hey, these designs are bad. This game is gonna fucking fail if you allow it to be shipped like this. They weren't allowed to do it. They were probably threatened that if they did, they would be fired. And I got comments trying to basically defend the developers, and I was like, no. Like we have no proof that the developers are just completely on board with it or anything. And this proves it. If what he is saying is true, this proves what I was saying was correct. Yet again, because it's almost like I know what I'm fucking talking about. Yeah, that's fucking wild.
people would be interested in that, and just wanted to throw that out there. That Star Wars really apparently, or I'm sorry, Star Wars. Sony really saw this as a Star Wars like project for them, like the potential to, and now it makes sense.
Yeah.
Not only why they spent so much money on it, but why they bought the team. So there are people there, and to me, it's unclear who exactly the people are. I know some of the names. I don't want to get too deep into that because a lot of the things I learned were off the record, but obviously this is on background. And it's like, yeah, now it makes a little more sense. You spent, and by the way, the $400 million not included in how much it cost to buy the team.
Oh, okay. Yeah, of course.
So, yeah,
I wonder how much they paid.
So Concord is Sony's biggest released game by budget to date.
Actually, before we finish this video, actually, it's almost over. So
and it is the biggest loss that they've ever had as a company on a project before.
Okay. Yeah, that's all true. Now, I want to see Sony acquires Firewalk Studios. Now I have this pinned, one of these pinned in one of my comments, or one of my videos. Does this say how much it cost to buy? Not there. Let's see. It doesn't look like there is anything anywhere about how much it costs to acquire them. Let's see. Yeah, and that doesn't really surprise me that we don't get to know exactly how much it costs them to purchase Firewalk Studios. But yeah. So this is bad on multiple levels. One, it confirms everyone's suspicions that this was a DEI game, because they were so set on this being the future of PlayStation. They wanted this game to be the future of PlayStation, and that it was on the level of Star Wars. Like, just for reference, so everyone understands, Star Wars is one of the single biggest IPs in existence right now. Value of Star Wars. I don't know what this is off the top of my head. Let's see if we can. Nope. What is the net worth of Star Wars? Does this have any kind of figure? I'm sure it's in the billions, right? Yeah, so 42 billion, right? So for Sony to say that Concord is on the level of Star Wars when it is a brand new IP focused on diversity. Okay, I mean, okay, so up here it says almost 69 billion, right? Okay, so this is just merchandise sales. So yeah, it's like almost $70 billion. So for them to imply that this game is the future of PlayStation and has Star Wars like potential is the most asinine, backwards, dumb fucking statement of all time. Sony, Herman, if that was you, you have the biggest idiot of the year award. Congratulations. You are the dumbest motherfucker in gaming business right now. Like, Concord, here's the thing. Before Concord can even begin to ascend the mountain, the multiple mountain level heights of fucking Star Wars, it has to get over the mountain of Overwatch first. Because Overwatch is already an established IP, already making Blizzard millions and millions and millions of dollars, and already has a sequel, right? Overwatch 2. And it's free to play, by the way, right? So for it to have Star Wars-like potential, Sony saw it as being bigger than Overwatch, like, from the outset, because it would have to have launched to a reception that is significantly larger than Overwatch 1 or 2 ever had. Ever. They would have to have had, on the first week, more players playing Concord than the most amount of players playing either of the Overwatch games at the same time. So they would have to have a higher concurrent player base in 1 week than Overwatch has had ever. Which is not happening for any new IP. Like that level of success and fame is almost impossible, right? Because of how big Overwatch already is. Now, it's not impossible, obviously, for indie games to come out, pop off, and go absolutely fucking viral and make, several $1 million and become a instant cult classic overnight. That's not impossible. I mean, just look at like Dave the Diver, for example, right? There are plenty of indie games that have proven that this is possible. Few and far between, but it is possible. Squirrel with a Gun is the latest game that's come out and become an overnight sensation. Oh, I say overnight. That game's had a lot of hype for a while, and it's an absolute fucking amazing game. But yeah, so for Sony to sit here and say this, Sony, you are fucking delusional. You are. Anthem's fall must have hit Sony. Like, Anthem's failure must have been like an anvil in Minecraft being dropped from fucking build height onto one player all the way down at fucking bedrock. Like that's how hard Anthem's fall must have fucking hit Sony for them to say this kind of fucking delusional shit. This is fucking wild from Sony. Like, holy goddamn. Yeah. Sony, I feel sorry for you, Sony. You need to be taken to the hospital and put down, because if anyone thinks you're a competitor in the gaming space after this, they're just as delusional. They are just as you are not competitive at all if this is your fucking mentality. If Sony is going to spend this level of fucking money on brand new IPs and take this massive of a risk, they're going to go bankrupt long before they make any of this profit. Long before. And that's a guarantee. So, yeah. Thank you all for coming to my corner. I've been the Demon as always. Leave a like if you liked the video. Hit subscribe. If you didn't like the video, hit the dislike button. Leave a comment letting me know why. And in the meantime, I am going to hope that Concord finally fucking dies and stays dead. And, oh, God. I'll see you all next time. Hopefully without Concord.